Good evening and welcome to the Molten Truth. I am here today with Brian Heilig. He is, you might say, an author born from a traumatic set of circumstances. Brian and his wife Diana had to deliver their first baby at 26 weeks due to severe preeclampsia while they were living in Cancun, Mexico. Their son Grayson was only 12 inches long, weighed 1.6 pounds, and you're going to be amazed by Brian's story. But little did Brian know that this dramatic event would also give birth to a joy for writing. So I'm going to step back and let Brian share his story with us. And I just, I'm so thrilled to have you here, Brian.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate being here and look forward to our chat. So
So I'm
we,
going to take a back seat and let you have the floor.
okay, cool. Yeah. So let's see. My wife Diana and I, we met in high school 35 years ago. And we both came from divorced families, parents. So we took our time in doing everything. We were dating for a long time, and then we were engaged for a really long time. And Diana's like, all right, it's time to get married. And so in our late 20s, we got married. And then we decided, to live our lives, and we were traveling all over the world, thankfully. And finally, we were like, well, maybe, it's time to have kids. Now we're in our 30s. And we just said, hey, listen, if it's going to work, it's going to work. If not, no big deal. We're not really trying. If she gets pregnant, great. And so that went on for a long time, like 5, 6, 7 years. And then finally, now we're in our late 30s. And I was like, something's wrong, and we should get tested. So that was an experience of itself. But we found out that she was producing less eggs and they were less fertile. And so it was difficult for us to get pregnant. And that became now kind of this worry and the stress and everything. So we decided in the States to do IVF. And that was going the way it was supposed to go with all the shots. I can't believe how women can do that. That's incredible.
I can't even imagine.
Not the daily shots to the stomach, and then the last one in the hind end. But anyway, so we went for, it was supposed to be the day of implantation, so they extracted the eggs. I did my thing, and they said, okay, come on this day and we'll implant the embryos. And right before we were going to leave to go to the doctor, they called and they said, don't come. None of the embryos made it. And so we were just like, what? She just went through 3 months of these crazy shots. Her hormones are all over the place. And so that was a tough moment, real tough. And the doctor said, well, there's all these different avenues. We can do surrogate, this, that. And Diana was not hearing it at that time. And we just kind of said, okay, well, maybe we're not going to have kids. And then a friend of mine from work, she said, hey, listen, do you know that we have 3 children? I said, yeah. She goes, well, we fostered to adopt. And I'm like, wait, you could do that? Like, we were very foster ignorant. And the next week we were enrolled in foster parent certification program. That was, again, very interesting experience. But we became foster certified. And like 9 days later, they said, we have an 8-year-old or 8-month-old. And no, 8 weeks.
Oof.
Yeah, she was 8 weeks old. That's right. 8 weeks old. And do you want her? You need to let us know in 2 hours. We're like,
Oh, wow.
yes, And so we had little Eva for 5 months, and then we had to give her back to her parents. And that was super devastating. So that
Yeah.
was it.
Heartbreak on top of heartbreak.
Yeah, it was just it was a tough time. So it was, we're not going to have kids. That's it. It is what it is. Well, the company I used to work for in Mexico called and said, hey, we're getting the band back together. Do you want to come to Cancun this time? And Diana and I researched it. And it just so happened that our friend in Cancun was the acupuncturist for the IVF doctor. And he has a very high success rate. So Diana did all the investigation. It was, she said, I'll go to Mexico if we can try IVF again. I'm like, babe, that's on you. If you can handle it, yeah, let's roll. And it was a very different experience. It was also a seventh of the cost, at that time.
Absolutely.
all the people there were not from Mexico. They were from all over the world, just flying in for their IVF treatments. And
Sure.
so we did it. She got pregnant. We were excited. We went all the way. We found out it was going to be a boy, like super excited. And just about just over halfway, she developed severe preeclampsia,
Yeah.
which is her body started shutting down. It was terrible. Her blood pressures went way high, and so they said to save Diana's life, they have to deliver the baby. And we were at 25. How they do it is 25. 1, 25, 2, 25, 3, 25, 4, like however many days you are into it. She was like at 25, 6, or 4 or something like that. And
Right.
I was like, I don't understand. What do you mean deliver the baby? Like she just got a baby bump. Like it was very, I just couldn't understand. And so there was no option. We had to do it. And they delivered Grayson. He weighed, like you said, 1.6 pounds, 12 inches long. So imagine a ruler, and about 4 bananas for the weight. And
Hmm.
yeah, go ahead.
No questions. Questions only with this.
Oh yeah, gotcha. Right. And so then Diana's body shut down. So they put him in the NICU. Diana's body shut down, swelling everywhere, water in her lungs, brain swelling, organ swelling, and they had to put her in the ICU.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there going, what is happening? I mean, I called my mom, my dad, her parents, and her mom and my mom just immediately flew out. They made it right before the delivery, and so they were there, but they didn't let anyone to see it, the baby. Like the moms never saw the baby until we moved to the States, which happened next. But it was wild. It was just wild.
Well, and I'm glad the family was able to make it. When you and I had spoken ahead of time, I was under the impression that only maybe some close friends, co-workers in Mexico. So hearing this additional detail about the family being able to be present, especially during such a stressful, hard time when you needed that kind of support,
Yeah, yeah, it
I'm so
was
happy to hear that they were there for you.
absolutely. And the friends that we have there in Cancun, coworkers, were literally like family, and they did so much to help us out as well. So we really felt, that we were surrounded by friends and love and all that good stuff. But it's woo, it's tough. It is super
I
tough.
I can imagine. When you were talking about I believe you were saying, Grayson, something about water on the brain or along that. I actually have some experience with that in my personal life. I actually lost two siblings, both older than me,
Wow.
because I think there was something with the shots back in the day, but that was actually how they died. One did not have the brain developed, the other had water under the brain. So when you said that, that resonated with me because of that memory. I grew up always knowing that had happened in my family.
Yeah.
So I really feel how worried and stressed you would have been both over your son as well as your wife, both of them in potentially life-threatening situations in that moment.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, I remember just totally feeling helpless. Like I'm like Mr. Control Freak, I got to control everything, and there's no way I was controlling this one.
No.
It was just, yeah, like very sleepless days, not nights, sleepless days and nights, days and nights. And
Yeah.
but luckily after, I mean, Diana did not see Grayson until he was 4 days old, and they finally, she had a C-section, so she was dealing with that as well. And
Yeah, the recovery and
yep, so
yeah.
finally she got to see him, and I mean, he's so tiny, just like you could see through his skin. His skin was like translucent. You could see all his sternum, all his bones and ribs and everything. And
Wow.
he was struggling to breathe.
Yeah.
The worst part of everything. Yep, go ahead.
So I'm curious. The 4 days later, she saw him in person. They brought him to her or brought her to him.
Yeah, they wheeled her into the NICU.
Okay.
She stood, got her little bearings, and then went in to see him.
Okay, good. And so then you obviously were in there too, and he was probably inside that plastic little area where you put your hand in so you could touch
So
and
you would
hold
think
him.
Yeah, you'd think that's what it was, but that's one of the big issues that was happening then was the doctor in Mexico, the NICU doctor is phenomenal. The doctors in the ICU, phenomenal. The equipment in the ICU, phenomenal. But the NICU equipment was like super dated. And
Hmm.
so he was in a open box with saran wrap and a heat lamp. They did not have a proper incubator isolator.
What a picture.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the worst part of everything is that at that level in the hospital, the doctor does not speak English, and we definitely didn't speak Spanish. In fact, we had translators come, but they didn't understand the medical terms to be able to translate. So nobody knew what was happening the whole time we were there. We were in that NICU for 21 days,
Yeah.
and there was visiting hours there too in Mexico, so we could only be there for 3 1-hour sessions every day.
Ooh.
And our finally we got to a game of charades where the doctor would either give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down at how he was doing, and we didn't understand how good is good and how bad is bad. Thumbs down. So it was
Right.
extremely frustrating.
I can imagine. Now, you had mentioned something about, and I'm probably getting ahead of you, so I
Okay.
apologize, but you worked with someone who was related to the doctor that
Mhm.
you still keep in contact. So was that friend of any help with any of the translation at all and helping you understand?
Well, what was interesting is I didn't realize that I worked with him. Like
Okay.
I knew who I worked with and I knew the doctor, but I didn't know it was like the same company but totally different divisions. So I
Okay.
only knew his first name. I never knew his last name at work.
Okay.
If I did, I would have connected the dots, but I didn't. And it wasn't until our story came out that he was like, "Hey, that's my dad." I was like, "Oh, well, that would have been nice."
Yes, that would have been very helpful. He could have explained probably a lot to
Yeah,
you.
that could have helped. But
Oh,
but since then, yes, I'm still in contact with the doctor and with his son and my friend from work, and so the doctor's updating us on what's going on in Mexico, and I always update the doctor every birthday for Grayson. Like, here he is now. Here's a new picture.
that's amazing. So there reaches a point in your story where obviously they both leave the hospital, but you're still processing this. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Yeah, well, what had happened is great. Diana started getting better and better, and finally came home. And then we didn't know what we were going to do with Grayson other than just go there 3 times a day. And, I wasn't working, obviously, at that time. There's no way I could work. And um, there's a whole nother thing, and you can read it in the book, but like the insurance denied us for her and for him. It's just all these weird loopholes. And so it was the word was getting out, and our friends, not only from Mexico but also all over the world, really were texting us and WhatsApping us and Facebook Messenger, all this stuff. And it got to a point where we couldn't reply to everybody, so we chose to do an interview style Facebook Live with our friend in Texas, who we just went live and we just went back and forth interview style to answer everybody's questions and just to get everybody kind of on the same page. Well, when we did that, it was incredible. It completely went viral, and we had NICU nurses from all over the world reaching out to us privately saying, "Hey, listen, he's not really in the best position. If they could do this, his legs shouldn't be spread out. If they could do, is there a proper incubator? If you could move him to the States, that would be much better." And we're like, "What? Move him? Because he's in the best hospital with the best doctor in Cancun."
Right.
And unfortunately, his hands were just tied because of equipment.
Yeah.
So we were able to finally get a translator to just ask, "Hey, if we could move him to the States, would that be better for Grayson?"
Mhm.
And
Was it thumbs down?
yeah, no, sometimes the emotions hit me. So
Oh, sorry.
yeah, no, it's all good. He said yes, like absolutely. If you can get him there, he would be better off. So we're like, how does that happen? And we went on Facebook Live and just said, listen, if anybody has any context, if you could help us, like, we don't even know where to begin. And all these people started pouring in different ideas and help. And I'll call this person. It's just like the community was just incredible. It was very overwhelming in an amazing way. All the community that came together for us. So
That is, I mean, I keep hearing this and I'm thinking, wow, this is like the kind of like the grandfather idea before GoFundMe was ever a thing.
yeah. Well, it was somebody. So somebody started a similar GoFundMe. It was
Yeah.
called Plum Fund.
Oh,
And I didn't know what that was. I knew about GoFundMe, but I'd never heard of Plum Fund. And people, oh my gosh, it was just, that was the only way that we were able to do everything that we did. So we had people donating all over the place, monetarily, prayers, just, they were doing fundraisers for us. I mean, it just
wow.
to consider what, that's what gets me most emotional, It's
Well,
like,
yeah, that
oh,
outpouring of love.
yes. It's like, who am I? Why do we deserve this? But it was just an amazing
Mm.
time to have our community come together for us. So our friend Roxy was on a cruise ship at the time. She didn't know what was going on. She got to port and then just went on Facebook and then found, I mean, the video was like right in her face. And she's like, oh my gosh, I know somebody at this hospital in Miami. Let me see if I can help. It happened to be, you can imagine this, it happened to be the international coordinator, right, to transport babies from all over the world to their hospital. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So we reached out to her. Her name is Gina, and she's like, tell me everything, and I've got you covered. And it was like 2 days later, okay, we have a flight coming. It's going to be at this time. They're going to transport Grayson. We got to leave at this time. Blah, blah, blah. And it just happened. It was incredible.
That is amazing.
So then we fly him out. It was 21 days. And the plane was so small that, and we had our dog in Mexico, and Diana was like, I can't do it. Like, I can't go on that plane with our kid. So I said, okay, I'll go on the plane. You go on a regular plane with Cha-Cha, our dog, and I'll meet you in Miami, and it was I've never been on a plane so small before in my life, and it was the pilot, the co-pilot, 3 nurses, Grayson, and me, and that's about all that you could fit in there.
Wow.
And this sucker took off. We were at 40,000 feet or even higher, but our ears never did that ear thing because
Really?
there was pressure for him, for the baby. It's somehow they pressurize it where they don't feel it. And
Huh.
we were cruising. We went from Cancun to Miami in 45 minutes. It was like,
Wow.
bam, we were there.
Just a short drive.
Yeah, exactly. It was just wild. And
Wow.
they were on their computer the whole time watching the baby and communicating with the ground in Miami. Like, here's what's happening this moment. They were monitoring everything. I mean, he was in a mobile isolate. They had more mobile equipment than the NICU in Mexico.
Mhm.
It was just crazy. And so and then we get to Miami. Oh my gosh, there was, it's the whole 4th floor. There's like 80 beds and, NICU patients from all over the world. And his room in the States was the entire NICU in Mexico. Like, it was just amazing. We got to live in the hospital, sleep there, shower, be with him 24.
Good. That's a huge improvement just on that family support level.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's so necessary because we got to do kangaroo care, which is that skin to skin.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, and
Grey's Anatomy.
yeah, Grey's Anatomy. See, it's a real thing.
Well, I mean, they have to get their research, to make it realistic for the show. So I know it from that one episode.
That's great. Yeah, I was like, Kinga, what? So yeah, it's a definitely a real thing. We had music therapy. The hospital was absolutely incredible. I mean, there was a movie theater, there's a hair salon, a place to do your clothes. There was, so we stayed in Miami then for another 84 days in their NICU. So 105 days total, 2 NICUs, 2 countries, and the support just continued. And finally, we got to bring him home. So, it was crazy. It was crazy.
I bet. So I'm going to let you continue at your own pace, but I know at some point the dust settled, but you were still processing emotionally. So I'll let you continue. But Just
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I never really believed in PTSD. You know, I was like,
mhm.
oh, they're just being dramatic. Well, let me tell you,
It's a
it's a
thing.
real thing. I mean, look, we could be watching a medical show and they have a NICU, and I look at my wife, and we're crying, "Ah," right? Just the noise of the beeps, the specific beeps in the NICU,
Oh yeah, I bet it brings it all back.
it just triggers. It's just unreal. Like you can't imagine. And so, in all of this craziness, our friend Jolie had put in the comments of the live video, you had hundreds and hundreds of comments, and she had put in there, we should write a book because it's just that crazy of a story. And I was like, yeah, right, sure, I'll write a book. But that kind of was it planted the seed.
Hmm.
And so years later, I said because then we would tell other people about the story, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's like this should be a book or a movie or something." It's just hard to imagine, you know, and it's a true story, and I lived it. They were watching us like Truman Show, you know, like what happens to the Heiligs today, you know, and so it's because we were very, very open to share and just bring people along our experience, and it was 3 years. So we said, yeah, we should write the book. And, I've never written anything before in my life. And, so I just said, okay, someday I'll do it. Someday. And
Hmm.
it was like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And,
Yeah.
and finally, it was the pastor at our church. He said, have you ever asked what God wants you to do with your life? And I'm like, no, I always want what I want. But he said, try it. Just close your eyes, ask. And I was like, okay. So I said, what do you want? And it was instant. It was write the book, speak about it, and transform lives.
Hmm.
And that next day, I wrote the first word and sentence, and that turned into the first paragraph. And we wrote a book.
Yeah,
Crazy.
absolutely. Now, as you wrote the book, did it do anything for you on a personal level?
Absolutely. It was very difficult. I wanted to be because it's a memoir, so I wanted it to be as accurate as possible. And as you start to know me, control freak, OCD, everything's got to be like perfect. So I was really making sure, but in doing that, it was almost a day by day process of what we went through, and reliving it was
Mhm.
very traumatic. It was, I don't know how many boxes of Kleenex I went through. You're just typing, everything's fine, and then all of a sudden, boom, you get hit with this emotion. And
Yeah.
so, but on the same note, it was very therapeutic because I was able to, in essence, kind of get it out, and
Hmm.
talk about it. And
Yeah.
so Diana would she would come out of the room and I just had mounds of Kleenex, and she's like, "What the? How are you doing this?" And I'm like, "Hey, do you want to read it?" And she's like, "No, I can't. There's no way I can't read it." And
Yeah.
so yeah, it was definitely therapeutic, and yeah, I don't know. It was an experience.
Absolutely. So, was there at any point where Diane did want to have any input into the story?
So she always wanted to read it. It's just she would read the first paragraph and
And
just
it was
lose
too
it. Just
much.
lose it. So it took 26 months to write and then 10 months to edit because I did a lot of the editing myself, and then I hired a proper editor for the last bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the last edit before we're going to print, and I told her, I said, Diana, if you want any input at all, it's got to be now, or else the book will be what it is. And don't come later and be like, oh, you should have done this or changed that. Why'd you do that? I said, please, babe, you got to read it. So she forced herself. Biggest mistake she made was going to Starbucks to try to read it, because two paragraphs in, she's literally wailing
Mm.
inside, right? So she put the kids to school, and then she just dug in and read it, and I think she read it in like a day and a half, 2 days, and she added some things, we took out some other things, but it was interesting is because I wrote this from my perspective and what I went through, right? Because I don't
Right.
know what she went through. She was in the ICU and I wasn't in there.
Mm-hmm.
I just visited, 1 hour a day or whatever, and so I just wrote it from my perspective. She's reading through it and she goes, I had no idea what you went through.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know how you are alive, with all the things that happened behind the scenes that she didn't know about. She's in the
Yeah,
ICU for 3 or 4 days. It was pretty wild.
I
Even the
believe it.
flight, like she didn't know how small the plane was or what was going on. All of it.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it was interesting.
That's
But
I would imagine that perspective just because how could you possibly know unless you were there in that moment or you spoke about it, but it's too traumatic to speak about at the time.
yeah, and when we got him to um, Miami, it was okay. So I got him there, slept. She came the next afternoon on the
Mhm.
flight.
Mhm.
And then it was like game on. We got to get his U.S. citizenship. We have to get all the insurance. We got to and I have to go back to Mexico, pack up our stuff, and fly that back. All of a sudden it was 100, 80 days later, and we never talked about it because we was just now what, now what, now what, now what, what's the next thing, and
Right.
we were just it was like a bullet train, and we're just hanging out for dear life.
Absolutely. So completely random thought. So is he a dual citizen then? Is he a citizen of Mexico now and US?
Yes,
So
yes.
as an adult later on, if he wants to live in Mexico, he is home free.
Home free, he can buy land and everything.
Bonus.
Yeah. He's our blonde haired, blue eyed Mexican.
I love that. There's another book in there somewhere.
Absolutely. So funny. Well, after then, so we get him home. That was a whole experience. Is like he had to come home with a chest thing, and it was like the monitor, like because the preemies at that young, he's a micro preemie. Uh, they forget to breathe because they're supposed to be inside the womb.
Yeah, and you have to like touch them to get them like to startle them to start breathing again.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
case.
Because oh my gosh, the monitors just start going off. It's like Vegas, bing, 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 bing. And you're like, what is happening? And oh, he forgot to breathe. You got to shake him. You got to do all this stuff. And you're like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Well, so it was it's the best day and the scariest day to bring your kid home from the NICU after that long because you're out of the NICU, yay, best day ever. But then terror sets in because you don't have nurses and doctors right there, and what happens if something happens? It's just a nightmare. And so he came home with like a kind of like if you see runners and they have this little thin chest strap.
Yes.
Yeah, so he had that around him,
Mhm.
hooked up to a monitor that would alarm if he stopped breathing or did any kind of apnea stuff. And he did a couple times, and I'm telling you, it was so loud. Like I think I levitated off the bed. Like it was just insane. And then it was false alarms, a couple times. We're just like, I can't deal with this. Like it was like there's no sleeping. But
Mhm.
what was interesting is so now we went through all this to have a kid, and she can't get pregnant. We tried the IVF, didn't work. Second round of IVF, okay, fine. 2 years later, Diane is like, hey, I think I'm going through menopause. I'm hot. I'm doing this. I'm cranky. I'm like, yeah, you've been really mean lately. Like, what is happening? And she's like, do me a favor on the way home, just get a pregnancy test. I'm like, yeah, right. Like, there's no way that this could. There's no way. You're just probably going through menopause. So she gets a pregnancy test. She's pregnant naturally. Can you imagine? And so now we're terrified because we're at week 20. Now we're at week 22, 23. You got to go past 26. Now we're at 26. You're like, got to make it to 20. Like stressful times. And he
Yeah.
did. Nathan was our buddy. He made it as far as he could go because she had to do another C-section. So I think it was 32 or something weeks. And so now we have little Nathan too. He's gonna be 6 years old in October. Grayson's gonna be 8
Wow.
in July. So what a crazy, crazy thing, crazy
How
story.
amazing. How
Yeah.
amazing. Just oh. So here we are, I guess 8 years later now.
Yep.
What does your life look like today?
Well, so there's another layer. At 2 years old, because of his prematurity, Grayson has been in every therapy since birth. Physical, speech, OT, all the therapies, and because he's delayed, he was late to walk, late to all of it, as
Mhm.
expected. he's
Yep.
3 months early. So, but at about 2.5, Diana's like, something's off. I don't know what's going on, but it's just, I'm like, yeah, babe, he's just catching up. And she's like, no, 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 something's off. So we had him tested, and
Mhm.
Diana was like, I think it seems like autism. And I was like, there's no way. He's fine. Everything's great. I don't even want to talk about that. Don't put that out there. And so we go to the doctor, and she's like, took 10 minutes. And she's like, no, definitely not autistic. And I told my wife, I'm like, see? And she said, okay. And then we go 6 months later. She's like, something's not right. He's not playing with the other kids. He's just not really speaking at all. And something's going on. So we go back to the same doctor, 6 month follow up. She's like, 10 minutes. Yep. Nope. Nope. He's fine. He's just going to grow into his self and all that. And we're like,
Mhm.
okay. But Mama Bear knows, you got to get that mama intuition. And we found
Yep.
a different doctor, and it turns out he was misdiagnosed, and he is absolutely on the spectrum. So at 3 years old, we figured that out. So he's been living life as a neurodivergent, and that's a very interesting element to our family. I think I'm a firm believer that because he's been in therapy basically his whole life, that he's progressing quite well considering what he's going through. He talks, he's, very, very intelligent. He reads books like crazy, but it's definitely a different element. And, so you know, he was diagnosed after Nathan was born. So Nathan's known his whole life that his brother is just a little different,
Yeah.
and it so day to day life is a lot of freaking out. Grayson can be triggered by the silliest little thing, freaking out, and then Nathan now trying to calm him down is the cutest thing. He's like, "It's okay, Grayson. You don't have to be upset."
Yeah.
We're so grateful for Nathan. He's our comic relief, and he's kind of Grayson's sidekick and shadow, if you will.
I like it. Every day's an adventure.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, but good stuff. I'm very grateful. I mean, for all the help that we had for just our family. I mean,
Mhm.
it's it's just a different thing to think about your life. If you I tell people, if you've been through the NICU, you can make it through anything. you know. So I
It's
always
like
keep a
boot camp
picture.
for parents.
Yeah, boot camp for, I mean, I'm telling you, I'm having a bad day, and I look back and I go, yeah, I'll be fine. We're gonna make it, just because
Yep.
of that experience. So yeah, and so yeah, that's it. I mean, I wrote the book. All the proceeds. There's no way I could take
Yeah.
$1 from the book. I just had a very strong conviction that all the help that we received, there was just no way that we could take a dime from the book. So after my expenses, which just happened, all my expenses are covered now. And so all the proceeds are going to go toward putting proper equipment into Mexican hospitals. We're starting with the hospital Grayson was born in. And
Mhm.
I don't know how it happened or what it was, but hopefully we brought some awareness, because they do now have a proper isolate or incubator in that hospital where Grayson was.
Good.
So yeah, but now the doctor goes, but I need monitors. So okay, yeah, we're on it. We're on it. We're gonna just,
Absolutely. But
yeah.
how beautiful that, first of all, you had the help when you needed it from others, but then even though you still had those expenses, the book was able to get you from deep in the hole to baseline, and then now you're using that to help future families with those obstacles.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, I really applaud that.
Thank you. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. It just, again, in the beginning, I just kind of went back and forth. I never really expected to make millions of dollars with the book, but I just knew that I couldn't actually take any money from it, and so it's just a way to give back and bring awareness. And I think the book, so that's like that was the calling, right? So write the book, speak about it, transform lives, and that's why I'm here. So I'm at step two, and I
Absolutely.
feel like, Zoe, like maybe you have the connector that can make this thing go big and huge. And the book is just kind of the way into, I want to be able to speak on stages and and really hit a broader audience. So the book seems to kind of be like the entry in, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the title of the book?
It's called Breathe, Eat, Poop, and Grow.
All right. Hits all the main points there, doesn't it?
That's the only thing in life that we were focused on. You know, that was
Yeah.
it. It's funny how your big dramatic life is reduced to poop.
Well, with babies, I mean that's just how it is.
That's how it is, right? And in the book, you'll find out why that's the title. But yeah,
I can imagine. So,
breathe.
how long ago was the book released?
So it was March of 24, is March 12th of 24. So just
Okay.
over a year now.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
And I understand you've been doing a number of podcasts. Mine is only one of, I hope, many.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yep. I've
you
been doing.
definitely are getting the practice in, reaching the audience that you need to reach. So,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, it's people. I wrote it originally to just support NICU parents, but the
mhm,
feedback that people are getting is like it's giving them inspiration for their life. You know, like so if Grayson can make it, I can make it, kind of a thing. And they've never been
absolutely.
around the NICU, so it's like wow, it's impacting more lives than I could ever imagine, and I'm very grateful for that.
That is amazing. Well, I look forward, hopefully, at some point in the future, seeing you doing a speaking engagement or
Yes.
possibly having you on as a guest again, maybe for a future book,
Sure,
and hearing
absolutely.
some updates.
Very cool. I would love that.
Yeah. Any advice for anyone else out there who might be in the midst of that situation right now? Anything you'd like to share with them?
Yes, it a couple things. So I'll speak specifically to the dads first. We as dads, and maybe you're a brand new dad, you're a couple days as a dad. It doesn't really matter. But if you're in the NICU, you gotta get help. Like accept help. This is not a time to be macho. You just people want to help and you can't control what's happening, so allow the help in whatever capacity that looks like. If people are bringing you food or just there for you to take a break, try to sleep, because it is not easy. And don't fool yourself that you can make it. At the same time, you got to stay on the roller coaster ride. Just stay on the ride, and really the time to become macho is when you don't feel the advice you're getting is the best thing for your family. So there's times, although the doctors are incredible and the nurses are phenomenal, there's certain things that they wanted to do at times, and we were just like, it doesn't resonate with us, or this formula isn't working. I really want this formula, and or ask the questions if you don't know. I telling you, if you can communicate and speak the language, ask the questions that you need to know. But so the time to be macho is to advocate for your kid at all costs.
Absolutely. That's beautiful advice. And so I gather from your based on what you just shared, your definition of macho isn't necessarily like I'm the man, it's my way. It's more like I'm the man, it's my job to take care of my family.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, don't try to be a hero where you would say, I don't need to sleep, I'll be fine, I can do that, and you don't take care of yourself.
Right.
But be that advocate, and stand strong in your beliefs, your faith, your questions, ask, and because they're intimidating. These doctors are insanely skilled at extreme emergency situations, and they don't have a lot of time to have a bedside manner, and that's what you want. That's the doctor you want. It's very rare where they're actually having fun. It's just all business, and that's what you want. But at the same time, it can be intimidating to even ask a question. And it's not like they don't want to answer, it's just the focus.
Priorities.
The priority focus is the kid, save the kid at all costs. That's it, done. And again, that's what you want. But then there's nurses and there's others. If you have a question, ask. Just ask.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you so much for making time to be here to share this with us. I can't wait to get this posted and get this message out there. hopefully more people reading your book, getting those proceeds to the NICU there in Mexico and other hospitals, because it sounds like that NICU is just the beginning of what you hope will be a lot more help.
That is true. That is true. As many babies as, but hey, if we could save one baby's life, could you imagine?
Yeah, one would be a victory. More would be icing on the cake.
Absolutely. You got it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I thank you again, and I will get this out here so that other people can see it. I'm going to
Awesome.
end the
Appreciate you,
recording.
Zoey. Thank you so much.
Okay.